My name is Mason Parker, 34 years old, and until last month, I thought I had successfully distanced myself from my toxic family. I had built a good life as an IT consultant with a beautiful home I worked hard to purchase. Then came that phone call from my father, demanding I hand over my house to my golden child sister Rebecca and her 3 kids. His exact words still echo in my head. "It's just a house, Mason. Family comes first." Little did they know I had an ace up my sleeve. Before I dive into this story, where are you watching from? Hit that like button and subscribe if you've ever had to stand up to entitled family members. Trust me, you'll want to see how this plays out. Growing up in our middle-class neighborhood in Grand Rapids, Michigan, I learned early on that my place in the family hierarchy was permanently fixed below my sister. Rebecca was 2 years older than me and could do no wrong in our parents' eyes. Our father Richard, a construction company manager, and mother Linda, an elementary school teacher, created a household where Rebecca's needs and desires always took precedence over mine. The pattern started in our early childhood. While other parents proudly displayed their children's achievements equally, our living room walls and refrigerators showcased Rebecca's finger paintings, participation certificates, and eventually her mediocre report cards. My straight A's and academic awards were acknowledged with distracted nods and quickly filed away in drawers. "Your sister needs more encouragement," my mother would explain whenever I questioned the disparity. "You're naturally good at school, but Rebecca has to work harder." This explanation never quite satisfied me, especially when Rebecca received lavish praise for bringing home CS while my achievements were treated as expected. Christmas mornings were particularly telling. Rebecca's pile of gifts always towered over mine, not just in quantity but in thoughtfulness. She would receive exactly what she asked for, while I'd get practical items or generic gifts that showed little understanding of my interests. When I was 12, I received a science encyclopedia while Rebecca got the expensive video game console we had both requested. The justification? "You like to read anyway." By 14, I had grown accustomed to being self-sufficient. While my parents attended every one of Rebecca's softball games and school plays, they made it to perhaps 1 in 5 of my academic competitions or chess tournaments. I stopped asking if they would come, finding it easier to tell them about events after they had already passed. "Sorry we missed it, but you know your sister had her dance recital," became a familiar refrain. When it came time for college, the disparity continued. Despite my scholarships covering a significant portion of my education, I still worked 2 part-time jobs to make ends meet. Meanwhile, Rebecca changed her major 3 times at a more expensive private college, with our parents covering all expenses and sending her spending money for weekend trips with friends. "Your sister's trying to find herself," my father explained when I questioned why I had to work 20 hours a week while maintaining a full course load. "And you've always been so independent." Independence wasn't a choice I made, it was a survival strategy in a family where resources and attention flowed in one direction. After graduation, I accepted an entry-level position at a growing tech company in Chicago, deliberately putting 300 miles between myself and my family. While Rebecca moved back home after college and worked sporadically at retail jobs, I focused on building my career. I limited visits to major holidays, finding that my mental health improved significantly with distance. Over the next decade, I worked my way up to becoming a senior IT consultant, specializing in cybersecurity for financial institutions. The work was demanding but rewarding, allowing me to build substantial savings. 3 years ago, at 31, I achieved a significant milestone by purchasing my home, a modern 4-bedroom house in a quiet Chicago suburb with a spacious yard and home office. The house represented everything I had worked for: stability, success, and a sanctuary where I controlled the environment. My parents' reaction to this achievement was predictably lukewarm. "It seems awfully big for just one person," my mother commented during her only visit. My father merely asked about the mortgage rate and property taxes, as if searching for a downside. Meanwhile, Rebecca's life took a different trajectory. She had married Kyle shortly after college, and they quickly had 3 children, Emma, Lucas, and Sophie. Despite Kyle's stable job as a sales manager, they never seemed financially secure, frequently borrowing money from our parents for emergencies that somehow included vacations and new vehicles. Each family gathering featured updates on Rebecca's latest crisis and how our parents had swooped in to save the day. When I declined to contribute to a fund to help them upgrade to a larger rental after their 3rd child, I was painted as selfish and cold. "You have all this money and won't even help your sister," my mother chided during a phone call. "What do you need it all for anyway?" What they never understood was that my financial security wasn't an accident but the result of careful planning and consistent work. I had learned to live below my means, save aggressively, and make thoughtful investments. These weren't values our parents had instilled in me, but lessons I had taught myself out of necessity. As the years passed, our contact became increasingly limited to obligatory holiday calls and occasional family events I couldn't reasonably avoid. I built a life filled with good friends, challenging work, and personal interests that had nothing to do with seeking approval I knew would never come. What I didn't realize was that the distance I had carefully cultivated was about to collapse. With my hard-earned home becoming the battlefield for a family power struggle I never asked to join. The first hint that something was amiss came through my cousin Patrick. During one of our occasional catch-up calls, he mentioned casually, "I heard Rebecca and Kyle split up. She moved back in with your parents with all 3 kids." This was news to me. "When did this happen?" I asked, realizing I was completely out of the family information loop. "About 3 months ago," Patrick replied, sounding surprised that I didn't know. "I thought surely someone would have told you. Kyle apparently left her for his assistant or something equally cliché." After hanging up, I felt a mix of emotions: sympathy for my sister's situation, concern for my niece and nephews, but also a nagging sense of foreboding. Family crises had a way of boomeranging back to impact me, usually in the form of expectations I never agreed to. Sure enough, 2 days later, my phone lit up with my father's name, a rare enough occurrence that I knew something was up. "Mason," he began without preamble, "we're having a family dinner this Saturday. Your mother insists you come." The abruptness of the invitation after months of minimal contact was suspicious. "What's the occasion?" I asked. "Does family need an occasion?" he countered, his tone already defensive. "Your sister's going through a rough time, and we should all be together." I weighed my options, knowing that declining would trigger a cascade of guilt and accusations. "I'll be there," I finally agreed, already dreading the evening. That Saturday, I made the 3-hour drive to my parents' house, arriving exactly at the requested time of 6 o'clock. The scene I walked into seemed orchestrated for maximum emotional manipulation. My mother hugged me with unusual enthusiasm, my father clapped my shoulder awkwardly, and Rebecca sat at the dining table looking appropriately downtrodden. Her 3 children playing quietly in the living room, suspiciously well-behaved compared to their usual energy levels. "Uncle Mason!" 7-year-old Emma called out, running over for a hug. Despite the complicated dynamics with my sister, I had always tried to maintain a relationship with her children, sending birthday and Christmas gifts and video chatting occasionally. Dinner progressed with strange undertones. My parents and Rebecca exchanged glances throughout the meal, as if following a script I hadn't been given. Rebecca asked unusually detailed questions about my house, my neighborhood, and my work schedule. "So you travel a lot for work?" she pressed, after I mentioned an upcoming client visit. "Not really," I replied. "Maybe 1 week every other month. But your house just sits empty when you're gone," she continued, sharing another look with our father. The conversation turned to Rebecca's divorce, painted entirely as Kyle's fault with no acknowledgement of potential complexities. "He just abandoned his family," my mother said. serving dessert with a pointed glare, as if I might similarly abandon my familial obligations. My father cleared his throat as we finished eating. Mason, you know your sister's in a tough spot right now. 3 kids, no husband, no job yet. I nodded cautiously, beginning to see where this was heading. That house of yours, he continued. It's got what, 4 bedrooms? Just sitting there with only you in it. I use the extra bedrooms, I said evenly. One's my home office, another's my gym, and I keep the third ready for guests. My father waved this away as if my use of my own home was irrelevant. Family should help family in times of need. That's all I'm saying for now. The rest of the evening continued with this strange tension, Rebecca suddenly becoming interested in aspects of my life she'd never cared about before, asking about my neighbors, the school district, the size of my backyard. Each question felt like reconnaissance rather than genuine interest. As I prepared to leave, Rebecca hugged me tightly, another rarity. It's been so nice seeing you, Mason. We should get together more often. Driving home that night, I replayed the evening in my mind, connecting dots that formed an unsettling picture. The questions about my house, the emphasis on Rebecca's predicament, my father's comment about family helping family, it all pointed to something more than a simple dinner to support Rebecca through her divorce. My suspicions crystallized into certainty. They wanted something from me, something substantial. And based on the focus of their questions, I had a sinking feeling I knew exactly what it was. I called my friend Tyler the next day to process the strange evening. They're setting you up for something, he agreed after hearing my account. And whatever it is, they've been planning it for a while. I think they want me to let Rebecca and the kids stay at my house, I said, finally voicing my suspicion out loud. Would you be okay with that? Tyler asked carefully. I considered the question honestly. If it was a legitimate emergency and for a very short, defined period, maybe. But that's not the vibe I got. This felt like the prelude to a much bigger ask. My intuition proved correct sooner than I expected. Exactly 1 week after the dinner, my father's name appeared on my phone again. This time, I was prepared for what might be coming. I just didn't realize how audacious the request would actually be. Mason, my father began after minimal small talk. I've been thinking about your situation and Rebecca's. My situation? I repeated, already on guard. Yes, you, all alone in that big house. And Rebecca cramped up with 3 kids in your old bedroom at our place. His tone suggested he was presenting a perfectly reasonable observation rather than a calculated setup. Dad, I bought my house specifically to suit my needs. It's not too big for me. He continued as if I hadn't spoken. Your mother and I think we've come up with the perfect solution for everyone. Rebecca and the kids could move into your house temporarily. Just until she gets back on her feet. Though I'd anticipated something like this, hearing it stated so bluntly still took me aback. And where exactly would I be in this scenario? A telling pause followed. Well, you could stay in the guest room when you visit. Or maybe rent an apartment nearby. It's not like you couldn't afford it. The audacity of the suggestion, that I should vacate my own home entirely, left me momentarily speechless. Not just allowing Rebecca and her children to move in with me, but actually giving up my house to them while I found somewhere else to live. Let me get this straight, I finally said, working to keep my voice level. You want me to move out of the home I bought with my own money so Rebecca can live there? It's just temporary, he insisted. Though his definition of temporary remained conveniently vague. A year, maybe. Just until she gets her divorce settlement and finds a job. That's not going to happen, I stated firmly. My house is not available. His tone shifted instantly from reasonable to accusatory. This is exactly the kind of selfishness I've come to expect from you. Your sister has 3 children, Mason. 3 children who need stability and space. What do you need all that space for? To store your expensive toys and show off to your friends? I recognized the familiar pattern. My needs dismissed as selfish indulgences while Rebecca's were framed as absolute necessities. It was the same dynamic that had defined our childhood, now escalated to include my major financial assets. My house is not up for discussion, I repeated. I'm sorry about Rebecca's situation, but taking my home isn't the solution. She's family. He exploded. Those kids are your flesh and blood. How can you be so cold? I'm not being cold, I'm maintaining a reasonable boundary. There are many ways I could help Rebecca that don't involve giving up my home. The conversation deteriorated from there. My father alternated between guilt trips. Your mother is crying over this. Threats. You'll regret turning your back on family. And attempts at negotiation. What if they just took the upstairs and you kept the basement? When these tactics failed to move me, he played his final card. Rebecca already told the kids they'd be moving into a nice big house with a yard. Emma is excited about having her own room for the first time. Are you really going to disappoint 3 innocent children? The manipulation was so transparent it was almost laughable. You and Rebecca shouldn't have promised my house to her children without speaking to me first, I pointed out. That's on you, not me. My father's voice turned cold. I always knew you resented your sister, but I never thought you'd stoop this low. If you don't help your family when we need it, don't expect us to be there when you need something. When have you ever been there when I needed something? The question slipped out before I could stop it, decades of unacknowledged truth compressed into one bitter sentence. A heavy silence followed before my father responded. You have until the end of the month to reconsider. After that, don't consider yourself part of this family anymore. The call ended with that ultimatum hanging in the air. I sat in my home office, the home I had purchased through years of hard work and careful saving, and let the magnitude of the situation sink in. My family was willing to disown me for refusing to give up my house to my sister. What struck me most wasn't the ultimatum itself but the complete lack of respect for my autonomy and achievements it represented. My home wasn't viewed as something I had earned but as a resource that should be reallocated to Rebecca simply because she needed it more in their eyes. I poured myself a scotch and walked through the rooms of my house, the kitchen where I had recently installed new countertops, the living room with the built-in bookshelves I had designed, the back deck where I hosted summer barbecues for friends. Each space contained pieces of my identity, my journey. The thought of being expelled from this sanctuary while Rebecca and my parents took it over made my stomach churn. That night, I made a decision. I would not yield to this pressure campaign. What I didn't realize was that my refusal would trigger an escalation that would force me to take drastic measures I never thought I'd consider against my own family. The day after my father's ultimatum, the real pressure campaign began. My phone buzzed consistently with messages from extended family members, aunts, uncles, cousins, all suddenly concerned about my relationship with my sister and parents. Families should stick together in hard times, wrote my Aunt Susan, who had spoken to me maybe twice in the past 5 years. Those kids need stability after everything they've been through, texted my cousin Mark, who I doubted could even name all 3 of Rebecca's children. It quickly became apparent that my parents and Rebecca had spread their version of events throughout the family network, casting me as the selfish villain refusing to help a struggling single mother. The narrative they created conveniently omitted the fact that they weren't asking me to simply help Rebecca but to surrender my home completely. 3 days after my father's call, my mother showed up unannounced at my door on a Tuesday afternoon. I was working from home and opened the door to find her standing there, looking simultaneously determined and uncomfortable. Mom? Why didn't you call first? I asked, genuinely surprised to see her. She rarely visited, claiming the 3-hour drive was too taxing. I thought we should talk in person, she said, stepping past me into the foyer. Her eyes scanned my home critically, as if mentally cataloging how the space could better serve Rebecca. I led her to the kitchen and offered coffee, which she accepted. As the machine brewed, an awkward silence hung between us. Mason, she finally began, I know your father can be abrupt. He didn't handle the conversation about Rebecca very well. The conversation where he demanded I give up my house? I clarified, refusing to let the reality be softened. She winced. It's not about giving up your house. It's about sharing what you have with family who need it more right now. Mom, Dad specifically said I should move out and find an apartment. How is that not giving up my house? She sighed. Shifting to what I recognized as her mediator approach, a tactic she'd often employed when trying to get me to acquiesce to Rebecca's wishes as children. Rebecca's in a desperate situation. The divorce has been ugly, and Kyle is fighting for full custody, claiming she can't provide a suitable home for the children while living in our spare bedroom. This was new information. But it didn't change the fundamental issue. I sympathize with that, but taking my house isn't the answer. My mother's expression hardened slightly. The kids are so excited, Mason. Emma's already picked out which bedroom would be hers. Lucas has been talking about playing in the backyard. The revelation hit me like a physical blow. You told them they could have my house before even getting my agreement. Rebecca might have mentioned the possibility to them, she admitted reluctantly. They'd been through so much with the divorce. This gave them something positive to look forward to. That was incredibly presumptuous and unfair, to them and to me. My mother reached across the table and placed her hand on mine. Mason, sweetie, I know you've always felt we favored Rebecca, but that's not true. We're just trying to make sure everyone in the family has what they need. Right now, Rebecca needs this house more than you do. The casual dismissal of my feelings, wrapped in a veneer of maternal concern, was so familiar it almost made me laugh. Some things never changed. Mom, I worked for years to afford this house. It's mine. I'm sorry about Rebecca's situation, but I'm not giving up my home. Her expression shifted to disappointment, another familiar look. I didn't want to mention this, but your father and I have been supporting Rebecca financially since the separation. We've nearly depleted our retirement savings. We can't keep doing it much longer. Though I felt a twinge of sympathy from my parents, I also recognized the pattern. They had enabled Rebecca's financial dependence for years. And now they expected me to take over that role in an even more significant way. After my mother left, I called my friend Tyler and relayed the conversation. They're playing hardball, he observed. Using the kids as emotional leverage is pretty low. I feel bad for Emma, Lucas, and Sophie, I admitted. None of this is their fault. True. But giving up your house isn't a reasonable solution. There are other ways you could help if you wanted to. Tyler's objective perspective helped me see through the fog of guilt and family manipulation. He was right, if I genuinely wanted to help Rebecca and her children. There were options that didn't involve surrendering my home. That evening I received a disturbing call from my neighbor, Jack. Hey Mason. I just wanted to check if you authorized someone to come look at your house today. A woman with 3 kids was walking around the property, peeking in windows. When I asked what she was doing, she said she was moving in soon and was just getting measurements. My blood ran cold. When was this? About an hour ago. She seemed very certain about moving in, so I assumed you knew. After thanking him, I immediately called Rebecca. She answered with false cheerfulness. Mason, I was just thinking about you. Were you at my house today? I demanded, skipping any pretense of pleasantries. A pause. Well, yes. We were in the neighborhood and thought we'd take a quick look. The kids were excited to see their new home. It is not their new home, I stated firmly. You had no right to go onto my property without permission, and you certainly had no right to tell your children they're moving into my house. Don't be so dramatic, she replied, her tone hardening. Mom and Dad already explained the situation to you. This is what's best for everyone. No. It's what you and our parents have decided is best without any consideration for me. Stay away from my house, Rebecca. I mean it. After hanging up, I sat down and tried to process what was happening. The situation had escalated from a request to an assumption to actual encroachment on my property. Something told me this was only the beginning. My instincts proved correct when, 3 days later, I received a call from another neighbor. "Someone's trying to get into your house," Mrs. Winters reported. "An older man and woman with a younger woman and some children. They seem to have a key, but it's not working." I had never given my parents or Rebecca a key to my house. The implication was clear: they had somehow obtained or created a key without my knowledge or consent. The boundary violations were escalating dangerously. That evening, I reached out to my attorney friend Jennifer for advice. After explaining the situation, she looked genuinely concerned. "Mason, this isn't just annoying family drama anymore. They attempted to enter your property without permission. That's trespassing, regardless of their relationship to you. What should I do?" I asked, still reluctant to take legal action against my own family. "Document everything," she advised. "Every call, text, visit. Install security cameras if you don't already have them. And I'd suggest sending a formal cease and desist letter to establish a paper trail." As I considered her advice, I received another call, this time from my cousin Patrick, who had initially informed me about Rebecca's divorce. "Mason, I thought you should know. Rebecca's been telling everyone she's moving into your house next month. She's even started packing up her stuff at your parents' place." The realization hit me: they weren't going to stop. Despite my clear refusal, my family was proceeding as if my capitulation was inevitable. They believed that enough pressure, guilt, and manipulation would eventually force me to give in, as it always had when we were children. But I wasn't a child anymore, and this wasn't about borrowing a toy or sharing the television. This was my home, the tangible result of years of hard work and sacrifice. And I was prepared to fight for it. I had been scheduled to attend a 3-day conference in Boston but managed to wrap up my presentations a day early. On impulse, I decided to drive straight home rather than staying for the networking events. It was nearly 8 in the evening when I turned onto my street and noticed 3 unfamiliar cars parked in my driveway. My parents' sedan, Rebecca's minivan, and a small moving truck. For several seconds, I sat in my car at the curb, trying to process what I was seeing. They hadn't just ignored my refusal. They were actively moving forward with their plan without my consent. The lights were on throughout my house, silhouettes moving past windows that should have been dark and empty. I called the local police non-emergency line first. "I'd like to report unauthorized individuals in my home," I explained, giving them my address. "Are you at the location now, sir?" the dispatcher asked. "I'm outside in my car. The individuals are family members who do not have permission to be in my house. An officer will be there shortly. Please wait in your vehicle until they arrive." 20 minutes later, a police cruiser pulled up silently. 2 officers approached my car, and I stepped out to meet them, driver's license and house deed ready to prove ownership. After verifying my identity, one officer said, "We'll accompany you inside, sir. Let us take the lead." I unlocked the front door with my key and stepped into a scene that made my blood boil. My living room furniture had been pushed against walls to make space for several boxes labeled "Emma's room" and "kitchen." My carefully arranged bookshelves had been partially emptied, the books stacked haphazardly on the floor to make room for children's toys and framed photos I didn't recognize. My father emerged from the kitchen, a tape measure in hand, freezing when he saw me flanked by police officers. My mother appeared at the top of the stairs, her expression shifting from surprise to defiance. Rebecca stepped out of what had been my home office, now partially transformed with a child's desk and colorful wall hangings. "What's going on here?" the taller officer asked, his tone professional but firm. My father recovered first. "This is a family matter, officers. My son agreed to let his sister and her children move in. We're just helping with the transition." That's absolutely false, I stated clearly. I never agreed to this. In fact, I explicitly told them multiple times that this arrangement was not happening. Rebecca stepped forward, 3-year-old Sophie on her hip. Mason, don't be ridiculous. We discussed this. The kids are already excited about their new home. The emotional manipulation was so transparent I almost admired its audacity. Using her child as a prop while gaslighting me about a discussion that never happened, it was a masterclass in toxic family dynamics. Mr. Parker, the officer addressed me. Do these individuals have permission to be in your home? No, they do not, I stated firmly. And I want them to leave immediately. You can't be serious, my mother interjected. We're your family. The second officer turned to my parents and Rebecca. I need all of you to start gathering your personal belongings. You'll need to vacate the premises. This is outrageous. My father blustered. Mason, tell them this is a misunderstanding. I stood my ground. The only misunderstanding is that you somehow thought you could move into my house against my will. As my family reluctantly began collecting their things, I noticed 7-year-old Emma and 5-year-old Lucas sitting on the stairs, looking confused and upset. My heart ached for them, innocent victims of their mothers' and grandparents' entitlement and poor planning. I knelt down to their level. I'm sorry you got caught in this adult disagreement. None of this is your fault, okay? Emma looked at me with hurt eyes. But Mom said we were going to live in your big house with the swing set. Your mom made a mistake, I said gently. This is my house, and I'm not moving. But that doesn't mean I don't care about you guys. My father yanked Emma away from me. Don't talk to them. You've done enough damage. The officers supervised as my family removed the items they brought. Rebecca made a point of having her children carry their own toys out, ensuring maximum emotional impact as they trudged sadly to the minivan. Before leaving, my father turned to me with cold fury. You've chosen a house over your family. I hope you're proud of yourself. No, Dad. You chose to ignore my boundaries and attempted to take my home. There's a difference. After everyone had left, one officer remained to file a report. You might want to change your locks, he advised. Family disputes can get complicated. Once alone, I surveyed the damage. Books out of place. Small nail holes in walls where Rebecca had hung pictures, scratches on my hardwood floors from moved furniture. But the physical disarray was nothing compared to the violation I felt. My sanctuary had been invaded, my explicit boundaries trampled. I called a 24-hour locksmith who arrived within the hour to change all the locks. While waiting, I received a barrage of messages from family members. From Mom. I've never been so disappointed. Those children were counting on you. From Dad. You've shown your true colors tonight. Don't bother calling for Christmas. From Rebecca. Hope you enjoy your precious empty house while your niece and nephews cry themselves to sleep. From various extended family. How could you call the police on your own family? Those poor children! Always knew you were selfish. I silenced my phone and poured myself a stiff drink. As I sat in my reclaimed but now tainted living room, I realized this wasn't over. The attempt to take my house had failed, but the campaign against me was just beginning. If I wanted true peace, I needed to do more than just react to their moves. I needed to take control of the situation. The next morning, I called in sick to work for the first time in years and began formulating a plan. The time for passive defense was over. I needed to understand exactly what I was dealing with and develop a strategy that would end this situation definitively. What I discovered in the days that followed would change everything. The morning after the police escorted my family from my home, I called Jennifer, my attorney friend. I need more than just advice now, I told her. I'd like to formally retain your services. We met for lunch that day, where I detailed everything that had happened. Jennifer listened intently, taking notes and occasionally asking clarifying questions. "What you're describing goes beyond normal family drama, Mason," she said when I finished. "This is a coordinated campaign of harassment and attempted property appropriation. We have multiple grounds for legal action here. I don't necessarily want to sue my family," I admitted. "I just want them to stop and leave me alone. Sometimes the threat of legal consequences is more effective than actual litigation," she assured me. "Let's start by gathering information. The more we know about their situation, the better we can formulate a response." Over the next week, I became an investigator into my own family's affairs. Jennifer helped me access public records while I leveraged my IT skills to build a comprehensive picture of what was really happening. What we uncovered was illuminating. Rebecca's divorce wasn't just about Kyle's alleged infidelity. There were significant financial issues involved. Court records showed multiple joint credit card accounts maxed out, a second mortgage on their former home that was now in foreclosure, and substantial tax liens. "No wonder she wants your house," Jennifer observed as we reviewed the documents. "She's financially underwater in a major way." Further digging revealed that my parents had been supporting Rebecca far more extensively than they'd admitted. They had taken a second mortgage on their own home 18 months ago, well before Rebecca's separation, and bank records showed regular large transfers to her account dating back years. They'd been bailing her out for a long time, I realized. This isn't just about the divorce. The most surprising discovery came when I looked into my parents' property records. The house they lived in, the home where Rebecca and I had grown up, wasn't actually in their names. It belonged to a family trust established by my grandparents before they passed away. As their only grandson, I had been named co-trustee alongside my father when I turned 30, though he had handled all trust matters since then. I vaguely remembered signing some paperwork at my grandfather's funeral 4 years ago, but had never been involved in trust administration. I requested the full trust documents from the county records office. "This changes everything," Jennifer said after reviewing the trust deed. "As co-trustee, you have significant legal authority regarding that property." The implications were staggering. While I had been defending my home from their invasion, I technically had partial legal control over the house where they and Rebecca were currently living. "I don't want to evict my own parents," I said firmly. "That would make me no better than them." "Of course not," Jennifer agreed. "But this does give us leverage for negotiation. Sometimes the best defense is a strong offense." With this new information, I developed a 3-part plan. First, documentation and security. I installed a comprehensive security system with cameras covering all entrances to my home. I formally documented all harassment, trespassing, and boundary violations, creating a chronological record with evidence. Second, investigation and preparation. I continued researching my family's financial situation, building a complete picture of the circumstances that had led to such desperate measures. I also reviewed the trust documents thoroughly, understanding exactly what authority I had and what responsibilities came with it. Third, and most importantly, I prepared a formal response that would establish clear boundaries while offering a pathway forward that acknowledged the legitimate needs of Rebecca's children without sacrificing my own well-being. 2 weeks after the attempted move-in, I received a concerning notification from my security system while at work. The cameras captured Rebecca trying to use a key in my front door, a new key that shouldn't have worked with my changed locks. When she couldn't get in, she walked around the property, peering through windows and testing other doors. I immediately called Jennifer. "We need to escalate our response," I told her. "They're still trying to access my property." That evening, we drafted a formal cease and desist letter detailing all instances of harassment, trespassing, and attempted unauthorized entry, with a clear warning that further violations would result in legal action. But the letter was only part of my strategy. The real turning point came when I uncovered financial improprieties in the family trust management. My father had been using trust assets, specifically taking additional mortgages on the trust-owned property, without proper documentation or approval from me as co-trustee. This wasn't just a family dispute anymore. It was potentially financial misconduct. I scheduled a meeting with the trust's attorney, bringing Jennifer along. The attorney confirmed my suspicions. Several transactions over the past few years required both trustees' approval but had only my father's signature. This is problematic, the trust attorney admitted. As co-trustee, you could challenge these transactions and potentially even petition for sole trusteeship based on mismanagement. Armed with this knowledge, I prepared the final component of my plan. I drafted a letter outlining everything I had discovered, along with a clear set of terms for moving forward. Jennifer reviewed it, making several suggestions to strengthen my position. "This is strong, Mason," she said after reading the final version. "Are you sure you want to take such a hard line?" I thought about the years of emotional manipulation, the dismissal of my achievements, the entitlement that led them to try taking my home. "Yes," I said firmly. "It's time for this to end, one way or another." I had the letter sent via certified mail to ensure delivery documentation. Then I waited, knowing that when they received it, everything would change. 3 days later, my phone rang with Rebecca's number. Her voice was uncharacteristically subdued. "We need to talk. In person. I'm not comfortable meeting at either of our homes," I replied carefully. "I suggest a neutral location, and I'll be bringing Jennifer." "Fine," Rebecca agreed, her usual indignation notably absent. "Just tell me when and where." I knew then that my strategy had worked. They had received my letter and understood, perhaps for the first time, that I was not going to back down, and that I had the means to enforce boundaries they had never respected before. The pieces were in place. After years of being the family doormat, I was about to change the dynamic permanently. Whether our relationship survived this confrontation remained to be seen. But I was finally prepared to stand my ground regardless of the outcome. We met at a private conference room in Jennifer's law office. I arrived 15 minutes early, reviewing my notes and mentally preparing for the confrontation. When my parents and Rebecca entered, their demeanor was markedly different from our previous interactions. Gone was the righteous indignation, replaced by obvious tension and, in my mother's case, visible anxiety. "Thank you for coming," I began formally after everyone was seated. Jennifer sat beside me, a professional buffer between me and my family. "Your letter was concerning," my father said, choosing his words carefully. "Some of your claims are exaggerated." "Everything in that letter is factually accurate and documented," I replied evenly. "We can go through it point by point if you'd like." My mother leaned forward. "Mason, surely we can resolve this as a family without lawyers and threats." "I tried resolving this as a family," I reminded her. "I clearly stated my boundaries multiple times, and you ignored them. You attempted to move into my house against my explicit refusal. You enlisted extended family to pressure me. You even tried accessing my home after I changed the locks. What choice did I have but to protect myself legally?" Rebecca, who had been uncharacteristically quiet, finally spoke. "You're threatening to make us homeless. How is that protecting yourself?" "I haven't threatened to evict anyone," I clarified. "I've simply pointed out that as co-trustee of the family trust, I have the legal right to review and potentially challenge the financial decisions that have been made, including the second mortgage Dad took out without my required approval." My father's face flushed. That money was needed for family emergencies. Emergencies like Rebecca's credit card debt? Or the down payment on the boat Kyle bought last year before the divorce? I countered, referencing specific transactions I had uncovered. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. I wasn't bluffing or speculating. I had done my research and knew exactly what had been happening with the family finances. "What do you want?" my father finally asked, his voice strained. I opened a folder and removed 3 copies of a document Jennifer had prepared. "These are my terms for moving forward. They're non-negotiable. As they read through the document, I watched their expressions shift from defiance to disbelief to reluctant acceptance. The terms were straightforward. First, an immediate and permanent cessation of all attempts to claim my home or pressure me about Rebecca's living situation. Second, formal acknowledgement that any future contact with me would be respectful of my boundaries, with specific consequences outlined for violations. Third, a structured plan for addressing Rebecca's financial issues, including mandatory financial counseling, job placement assistance, and a reasonable timeline for finding her own housing. Fourth, a proper accounting of the family trust and corrective measures for the improper transactions my father had conducted. "This is extortion," my father muttered, though without his usual conviction. "No, it's accountability," I corrected. "I'm not asking for anything that isn't legally and ethically appropriate. I'm even offering to help Rebecca get back on her feet, just not by giving up my home." Rebecca looked up from the document, tears in her eyes. "I can't believe you're doing this to us." "I'm not doing anything to you," I said calmly. "I'm responding to what you tried to do to me. There's a difference. My mother, always the mediator, tried a different approach. Mason, we're still your family. Despite everything, we love you. If you love me," I replied, "you'll respect my boundaries. That starts with acknowledging that what you did was wrong." The silence that followed was heavy with decades of family dynamics being forcibly restructured. Finally, my father spoke. "Fine. We'll sign your agreement. But this changes things between us." "Things already changed when you tried to take my home," I pointed out. "I'm just making sure it never happens again." After reviewing the document with my parents' attorney, who they insisted on consulting, they reluctantly signed the agreement. As they prepared to leave, Rebecca paused. "The kids miss you," she said quietly. "Despite everything, they ask about Uncle Mason." It was a calculated statement, but contained a truth I couldn't ignore. Emma, Lucas, and Sophie were innocent in all this. "I miss them too," I admitted. "Once things settle, I'd like to see them, on mutually agreed terms." In the weeks that followed, the implementation of our agreement began. Jennifer helped me properly assume my co-trustee responsibilities, working with the trust attorney to correct the financial improprieties my father had committed. Rather than pursuing penalties, I focused on establishing proper procedures going forward. Rebecca, faced with the reality that my home was permanently off the table, finally began taking practical steps toward independence. With the job placement assistance I had arranged through a colleague's HR department, she secured an administrative position at a local insurance office. The financial counselor I hired helped her develop a realistic budget and debt repayment plan. 3 months after our confrontation, Rebecca and her children moved into a modest 3-bedroom apartment. I helped with the security deposit and first month's rent, not out of obligation but as a genuine choice to support my niece and nephew's stability. My relationship with my parents remained strained but civil. Our interactions were limited to occasional phone calls and necessary trust business. Whether we would ever rebuild genuine warmth and trust remained uncertain, but the toxic dynamics had been permanently disrupted. 6 months after the attempted home invasion, I invited Emma, Lucas, and Sophie to spend a Saturday at my house. Rebecca dropped them off, our exchange awkward but civil. The children's initial hesitation quickly gave way to excitement as I showed them the backyard playset I had installed specifically for their visits. As I watched them play, I reflected on the journey of the past year. Standing up to my family had been painful and difficult, but necessary. I had discovered strength I didn't know I possessed and established boundaries that should have existed long ago. "Uncle Mason, watch this!" Emma called as she swung higher, her face bright with joy. In that moment, I realized something important. Family obligation isn't about sacrificing your well-being on demand. It's about making conscious choices to support each other while maintaining healthy boundaries. By refusing to be manipulated into giving up my home, I had actually created the possibility of a healthier relationship with the next generation of my family. The entitlement that had defined my relationship with my parents and sister was not present in my interactions with Emma, Lucas, and Sophie. With them, I could build connections based on mutual respect and genuine caring, rather than obligation and manipulation. That evening, after the children had gone home, I sat on my back deck with a sense of peace I hadn't felt in years. My home was truly mine again, not just legally, but emotionally. The invasion had been repelled, the boundaries established, and a new chapter begun. What would you have done in my situation? Would you have stood your ground or given in to family pressure? I believe everyone deserves to have their boundaries respected, especially when, it's family pushing against them. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more stories about standing up for yourself. Share your own experiences in the comments below. I read every one. And remember, blood relation doesn't automatically entitle someone to your possessions or override your right to set boundaries. Thanks for listening to my story, and I'll see you in the next one.